good evening. Today is Wednesday, April 24th, 2024, 6 p.m. We have a quorum present, so I would like to call to order this regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Commissioners of the Chittenden Solid Waste District. Meeting packet was sent out to all commissioners and posted properly for the public. First item on the agenda is the agenda itself. Are there any requests for additions or changes to the agenda? There are none requested in the meeting room, and I see no one or hear no one online, so we will follow the agenda as presented in the meeting packet. Item number 2 on the agenda is a public comment period. Are there any members of the public who wish to address the Board of Commissioners? I can state with confidence there are no members of the public present in the CSWD conference room, but perhaps there's somebody present via Zoom or phone.
There is not.
Seeing as there are none present in person, none via phone, none via Zoom, we will close the public comment period. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda, consisting of the minutes of the March 27th, 2024 Board of Commissioners meeting, standard program update memos, the executive director update, and the standard finance report. Are there any requests to remove an item from the consent agenda? We are going to remove the minutes for a little bit further discussion clarification. Any requests for any other item to be removed from the consent agenda? Hearing none, we will accept everything on the consent agenda with the exception of the minutes of our March 27th meeting. And I'll ask Sarah to just walk through with a couple of requests for clarifications on those minutes, which is important not only for the board's understanding, but also for the public and any future reference. So turn it over to Sarah to walk through.
Great, thank you. And the notes came from Rick Cross, so thank you, Rick, for your ELIs. So on the agenda, page 4 of the packet, agenda item number 5, there was a question regarding the statement that municipalities have payroll fees over 50%, and that should rightly be payroll costs, not fees. It's not a processing fee that we're talking about. We were talking about payroll expenses. So it's either payroll costs or payroll expenses should be the clarifying item there. There was also a missing decimal point, which is quite important, in the describing the MRF expenses. It should be 4.3 million, not 43 million on that line item. We are definitely not there yet, which is good. There's a question about the description of the maintenance and roll-off item. So that we talked about, we put out 2 things in that budget item about shifting the budget of the maintenance and roll-off program out of operations and into administration, operating administration, and also talked about an expense that they will incur. And so the attempt is to highlight some major changes or differences from one budget to the next budget, and that should have just been a separate sentence. So the question was, does the accounting shift relate to the trailer? It does not at all. It's merely another mention of an item that was standing out in the budget. That was on page 5. There was a comment that the capital projections didn't make sense at the moment, so I'm going to go back to that, excuse me, that item, and clarify that. So that is on page 5 of the packet, and where we talk about capital projections. So I think the confusion is, it says, review the capital projections, which included a fiscal 24 balance of 10.8 million, estimates a fiscal 25 balance of 6.2 million. So I think we're missing either a comma or an additional phrase. So the ending balance in this current year, should all projects be completed, would be 10.8, with fiscal 25 balance 6.2. That just means we're planning to spend that delta should all projects happen. So that just needs to be a little more explicit that that's what that change meant. Excuse So also on that page 5, it was a good point being made that we do continue to talk about the reserve transfers and how we prioritize where we're putting excess revenue. And we've been colloquially calling it a waterfall, but it really is a priority list. So we have our list of reserve accounts, reserve funds, and they're in a priority order, and that's where the excess revenue goes. So it tends to fall into the next subsequent priority reserve fund, but it's not really an effect. It is truly a mechanism, as Rick points out. So I think we'll just adjust how we describe that mechanism and call it a procedure or a priority list that looks similar to a waterfall, but we won't be calling it a waterfall effect. So that does make sense. Thank you, Rick, for that clarification. And I will ask Dan just to make sure that we're clear here on page 6, the agenda item number 6. So we're talking about no longer accepting compostable foodware, not products. But we're talking about compostable products. So that is accurate, unless you want to have additional clarification, Dan, that would make more sense. I think it is important to clarify this particular set of minutes because it was about the budget, so.
Yeah, so we stopped accepting compostable products exclusively, which is things that are fabricated to be compostable, not food wastes, not other organic items. The one exception to that is the compostable liner bags, as noted. But yeah, does that clarify that?
Yeah, we just wanted to make sure that we weren't specifically only talking about one thing or another, and that it was.
And at this point, we need to clarify what was said. We're not trying to revisit and
Correct.
rediscuss, but the intent at the time was to express compostable products.
Yes, correct.
Good.
And that is accurate to what we do. So those are the changes that Rick had asked about or suggested. We can make those changes for the record for the next.
Thank you, Sarah, for running through that. Rick, I appreciate you pointing those out. Are your questions answered? Any further concerns?
No, and a lot of these weren't concerns, they were just things that I didn't think were totally clear.
Yeah.
But I really appreciate what you said just now, Dan, because I was really thinking that products meant foodware. And so there's obviously other stuff you're talking about, and that really wasn't on my radar. So that's good to know.
Unless there's objection, this was, I could declare then we will accept the minutes of the March 27th meeting as further clarified and corrected. I will declare that then accepted as clarified and corrected. We're ready to move on then to item number 4. Just by way of preamble, we had an opportunity tonight on our agenda, felt it was a good idea to continue kind of our ongoing education efforts, both for the board and for the public, to review some areas and aspects of CSWD's operations that don't normally or necessarily come before the board. And it's just a good opportunity tonight to have one of those presentations. So for the next 20 minutes or so, we'll hear a bit about outreach and communications and have an update and presentation, then open it up to board to ask questions and gain a better understanding. So with that, I can turn it over to you, Beth, or Sarah.
Yep, and there is an accompanying memo in the packet, but I did ask Beth to come here and give a brief presentation. So I'm gonna turn it over to Beth Parent.
Hi, I'm gonna share my screen here. Let me know if you can see it.
We can.
All right, let me hit slideshow. From the beginning. All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Beth Parent. I am the Community Engagement and Outreach Manager at CSWD. I am part of a 4-person team. So let me show you who we are first, and then we'll get into what we do. We just had our headshots taken last week by John Chittenden. So this was our team photo. This is Rhonda Mace in the CSWD orange shirt. She's our school outreach coordinator. Gabriella Stevens is our business outreach coordinator, and Kat Moody is our community outreach coordinator. So what do we do? I like to look at this team as really 5 buckets of things that we do. We have direct business outreach, we do community outreach, school outreach, and new this year, we're really focusing on online outreach and partnerships. So I'm going to get into each one of those. Let's start with business outreach. What does that mean? So Gabby goes into businesses. She's providing tactical assistance. She's providing education. She's providing workshops and tours and waste sorts, and then really introducing a lot of these businesses to the grant programs that we have. This first photo was at Fuse Marketing on Monday for Earth Day. She gave a presentation about demystifying recycling in front of about 30 folks at Fuse Marketing as part of a lunch and learn. They were super engaged. They asked really great questions. And this is an organization that really is sustainability focused, and they still walked away learning a few new things. The picture on the next picture was a waste sort that we did at Champlain College. And that was just a chance and an opportunity for the administration, the staff, to see what's going into their waste. Where are there opportunities for them to improve? So we really got to dig in and see what they were doing and where the opportunities were. School outreach. Rhonda is our A1 school outreach educator. If you have ever had the opportunity to meet her or taken a class from her, you will remember. She is in classrooms. She's working with custodial staff and administrative staff on their choices and making sure that they're properly managing their waste. And then she's in the classrooms, pre-K all the way up to university education. And she is really dynamic and teaches these kids what goes where, why should we compost, why is this important? And to see these students so engaged, and then they go home and they tell their parents all about what they learned. So we're really, it's further than the classroom. You can see this first photo was, she had them drawing posters for their solar glass collection. And we'll get into solar glasses in a minute. And then another one, she's in the Frederick H. Tuttle Middle School talking about the importance of composting. And she's really showing them what goes into the compost that we make and why it's so important. And then we have our community outreach coordinator, Kat. She is working with our Waste Warrior program. So that during COVID took a little bit of a hiatus, but we've been able to bring it back. Last summer, we saw such tremendous excitement about these volunteers looking forward to starting up again and becoming certified waste warriors. Kat's working with event management. She's with the Burlington Farmers Markets, with the Vermont City Marathon, Higher Ground, Shelburne Museum, with all of their concerts that they have going on. It's really a great opportunity for her to work with not only the event organizers, but the vendors that are coming to these events, to make sure that even if they might not be in this county or even in this state, but these are the rules that you need to follow when you're working in Chittenden County. She's also working in senior housing and church groups. This picture right here, she was actually at Cathedral Square Assisted Living in Jericho and then in Essex, giving a presentation on what goes where and why it's important. She works with landlords. She does a lot of outreach to make sure landlords are giving their tenants the proper advice and the proper tools that they need to manage their waste. And then we're working with the towns individually and making sure their needs are met. So new this year, we're working with partnerships. So I think this is a really important part of outreach, because not only does it expand our education, it's also expanding our engagement with the folks in our community. And our goal is to partner with like-minded organizations that's going to help further CSWD's mission. So about 2 months ago, we partnered with Astronomers Without Borders to collect and reuse all of the solar eclipse glasses. And we really started small. We started with 10 collection sites in Burlington and Shelburne and Essex, and thought that was going to be it. And then as soon as the word picked up that we were doing this, it just grew, and it's been incredible. We stopped collecting glasses on Saturday. So on Tuesday, the CSW outreach team and probably some other volunteers that we're going to entice with snacks and whatnot, we're going to be counting those glasses to see how many we've received. And I've seen photos of what we have already that does not include what our drop-off centers have. And it's pretty impressive. And then we're going to count those glasses, and there'll probably be some more media interest, but, and then we're going to send those back to Astronomers Without Borders. Now, this partnership was so fun because we were able to create CSWD branded posters and social content to hand to all of these collection sites. So that way, when folks were done, they knew CSWD was a partner and they were going to be able to reuse these solar glasses. So you could see all of the, on a lot of these folks, they were sharing it on their social media. You could see I'm going to fast forward one more. We had those posters placed. That was at the Burlington waterfront, right after the eclipse. So you could see already folks were just leaving and dropping their solar glasses into the bucket. So it's been fun. Probably one of the most exciting parts of this, besides the excitement and the interest that we've had in the community, has been the media interest. We have done interviews with just about every mainstream local media partner in Vermont. We've also, the Burlington Free Press story was picked up by the Associated Press. So we were seen in Arizona and Texas and California. And then we did an interview with the Boston Globe. So it's been really fun to see this one partnership just really take on a life of its own and really bring some exciting news to the district. Our online outreach is also new. We are just recently, CSWD has taken over the CSWD Digest. I'm sorry, the outreach team has taken over the CSWD Digest. So we are working with all of the teams across the organization to make sure that we're putting out really engaging, informative content every single month in the Digest. Every Friday, we do frequently asked Friday questions on our social channels on Facebook and on Instagram. We are quite regularly spotlighting businesses and schools. And then we're also showcasing our event photos that we are doing. Like today, the entire team was at the University of Vermont today for their Earth Week festivities, and we held a tabling session. And I left around 1 o'clock, and we had already engaged personally one-on-one with about 83 people. And that was, we have a big wheel of what, and they get to spin the wheel. They can whatever they land on, they take a quiz, they follow us on social media, they have a chalkboard saying what they're gonna do to celebrate Earth Week this week. So if you check out, this is my big ask for everybody, if you could follow us on our social channels. Those are our two handles of the big ones that we are constantly posting on. If you see a post that you like, just give us a like, or even better yet, share it with your friends and your family. With social media, the bigger the engagement, the more the shares, the bigger the engagement and the bigger the reach. And it's just fun to see all of the people coming in, sharing with us, posting their photos. So if you can tonight, if I leave you with nothing else, follow us on our social channels. And that's just a little tiny snapshot of what the outreach team does. I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone has.
Thank you, Beth.
Yeah. And first of all, I just want to thank you and your entire team. Your enthusiasm is incredibly infectious. And I think around the room here, brought a smile to all of us and a lot of appreciation for what your team has been doing.
Thank you.
Putting a good face and a good spin for everything that CSWD is all about in a very positive way. It's not just this is what you should do, but this is what you want to do because it's the right thing to do, and we're really happy to do it. Mm-hmm. Turn it over to commissioners who have questions or want to make comments.
I think Rachel has a comment.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I popped a comment in chat about the first project you shared, and then you shared 10 more amazing projects that you worked on. So thank you so much. Those are all really cool initiatives, and I have just followed you on Instagram. So I'm really excited to see more. That was really cool. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Ken, you're up.
Yeah, I was just thinking, Beth, if any of those great posts you do, for those of us who don't do social media, for various reasons, if any of those posts are really, good about CSWD and you shared them with the board members, there are probably things we could put into Front Porch Forum, just continuing pops of information that I'd love to share.
That's a really great idea. And I will make sure to send Sarah and Jen and Amy anything that may fall under that. A lot of it will be in the digest too. So if you haven't signed up to receive our CSWD monthly digest, I would recommend doing that as well. You can do that right on our website.
And that's email, Beth, right? That's just an email once a month.
Great.
So I have a question that's kind of why do all this outreach? Why are we doing this? Why?
Well, honestly, it is tremendously rewarding. And ask any member of my team, sure, it's the right thing to do. It's part of our job, but it is so rewarding. I've watched Rhonda in the schools, and when she asks a question that I think there's no way these kids are going to get that, they raise their hand and they know. And some of them, it's because they've had Rhonda before, or their big sister has had Rhonda. My children have had Rhonda in their, come into their school, and they know, oh, Mom, you got to take that PLU sticker off that banana before it goes in the compost. That's what Recycle Rhonda says. It is truly a rewarding experience. And to go into some of these senior living communities, we have these big events. And everybody, we want to try and get the biggest bang for our buck, but really it's the one-on-one connections that we're making with people. That I think is our biggest benefit that CSWD brings to the community. We're out at the events, we're interacting, but it's that personal connection that we have with folks in the community. That's what's going to spread the message even further, in my opinion.
And one of the things, just to follow up a little bit on that, as to why do we do this? In Chittenden County, we every year have new people coming in to the county, whether they're coming in from other places in Vermont or coming from out of state. And so the rules, luckily in Vermont, are basically the same, but we may accept some things at our drop-off centers or at our locations that other districts don't. And certainly if you're coming in from out of state, guarantee the rules will be different here. So we're constantly educating, re-educating, but really, trying to find the folks who need that really basic information, what goes where, and how does Vermont do recycling? How do you do composting, and what are the rules? So it's very, very important for us to have an active presence to be able to make sure that we're not just, answering questions from folks who may have a little question about something that they don't normally need to get rid of, like maybe they have to get rid of something once a year. But for new residents, new businesses, it's critically important that we are active and out there and doing our thing.
And aren't we under some obligation to do a certain amount of outreach?
We are. It is part of our solid waste implementation plan. So it is part of our requirements from the state as part of their materials management plan. So we do have a requirement that we have to meet for business outreach, for school outreach. We blow the numbers out of the water, frankly. So, the bar could probably be a little higher for folks, but we've always just taken that and gone way above and beyond. So we every year meet those requirements, and we take it seriously because we do have the population center here in Chittenden County, and particularly on the business side, I think we could probably use 4 or 5 more people, if I'm being, frank, to really do that in-depth outreach. But it's amazing what we do with the core team that we have.
Paul?
Yeah, so I just got to point out that I think one of the major factors in Chittenden County having one of the highest diversion rates in the country is because of the efforts of the outreach and education and communications team. So I think the data shows their effectiveness personally. So.
I'll just offer, to echo what you just said, Paul, also one of the lowest contamination rates at our materials recovery facility. I know that the waste composition study is doing the analysis on the residue at the MRFs, the 2 MRFs, the Rutland and ours, and And preliminarily, I have heard that our contamination rate was somewhere between 7 and 8% compared to like 25% in the rest of the country. And it was lower than the Rutland MRF, which said to me, like, that's because of our outreach team. You know, when you're looking in Vermont as a pool and our contamination rate is lower than another part of Vermont, I attribute that to our education.
Unless there are any other questions, I just would like to thank you again, Beth, and your team, Rhonda, Gabriella, and Kat, for all the work that they do. I don't think they're present at the meeting, but if you could take the message from the full board, our message of appreciation and encouragement, keep up the great work.
I will, and thank you. I think Bryn has a question.
Yeah, thanks. Just wanted to jump in on, say that I think the online presence has been awesome. I really like the adding the monthly events that are coming up. I think that's been a really cool addition, and also in thinking of partnerships, that co-promotion really goes a long way. And lets people know like what's coming up, what can I plan for. So I think that's been like a really cool addition that you've started to do as well.
Great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and I'm glad the A to Z guide is staying and is being enhanced, because I use that all the time and refer to it all the time. So I am glad to see that sticking around as well.
Me too.
Again, Beth, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Thanks, Beth.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're now ready to move on to item number 5, the Organics Recycling Facility Contamination Policy. This was presented and discussed last month. We decided that we needed, it would, in everybody's interest, to give our commissioners a month's time to reflect on it, perhaps study it a little more, maybe develop additional questions or observations. So we're back here tonight to bring this again before the board. And ultimately, we hope to then take some action on a proposed resolution and see where we go with that. So if you have any other introductory comments, or we turn it over to Dan.
So I'll just make note that we did include in the packet the same material that you saw last month with an exception. So we did delete one of the more confusing parts of the policy. Dan and I talked about it, and we feel that we can address what we were trying to address with that portion that was deleted. We can address it a different way. So it was confusing for staff, it was confusing for haulers, so potentially for generators, we said, let's not add that work to the table, and we'll address it another way. So in the packet, in red, we included, again, the memo that was there last time, but in red, that is where we're highlighting what the change was. And then we re-included the policy with the red line strikeout, so you can see the portion that was removed for clarity and I think, again, based on some feedback from staff, from the board, and from haulers.
Did you want to add anything at this point, Dan?
Just that last month we had some good discussion. There's some good questions, but I know not everybody was there, so happy to answer additional questions if people have them. I did just continuing on the contamination theme from the last presentation. We also enjoy actually pretty good quality, low contamination as compared to most of the country for our food waste. So we're very happy with that. But as stated last time, we're really looking forward to having the tool to bring that even to an even better level back to hopefully where we were several years ago before the implementation of Act 148.
And I have been highlighting this as one of the items that will be included in the budget for next year when I give my presentations out in the community. And there, a few select boards have asked some questions about the contamination policy. So it's been a great opportunity to be able to talk to it to a little bit of a broader audience and directly to the legislative bodies. And the questions really have been, well, what is the contamination? And so describing what that is, describing how the policy is intended to be used, and saying, it's actually, while we're including it in our budget presentation, we're hoping to not have to actually levy any fines at all. So it's something that we've felt we've needed for a while. The haulers are, by and large, understand and certainly will hopefully be appreciative of having another tool in their toolbox to be able to help address issues. And so, I've been very, again, pointed about talking about it to the legislative bodies so that we're, again, spreading the word and as far and wide and as we can, and if they have any questions, to be able to answer them in real time as well.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you, Dan. Marty?
Yeah, well, I was totally convinced last month. And I guess the only thing that I would, suggest, and maybe this is already something that you do, is, when you do find contamination and do, make a load report to the hauler, those pictures were amazingly convincing. And I think once you look at the pictures, you really get a feel for when it's a problem. And I just found that very convincing. So I suggest that you use that whenever you need to.
Yeah, and Dan, that is going to be part of the process.
It is. I can't remember if we mentioned it at all, but we have part of the rollout will be an online file sharing mechanism where every hauler will have their own folder, and we will be providing links with their updated load report saying, here's the link to the last load that was covered in this load report, and they can look at it directly and then easily also forward those on to specific generators. That's, for instance, if there was something identifiable in the load and they said, oh, we know where that came from, they could easily send that photo along. But yes, we agree and have heard from other places across the country that photos are incredibly powerful. Even more powerful is if folks come and see it in person. So we will offer that invite to haulers and generators alike. But yes, definitely going to be an important part of the rollout.
Yeah, I'll just say I think it's a great new policy coming from having worked for a private hauler. I think it's definitely it is a nice tool in the tool belt, and it is something that, partnering with Beth's team to be able to go and do some of this outreach outside of the outreach that you do on a regular basis. But, I think, I don't know, that's just my perspective. I think this is totally needed. It'll be a great way to go back to generators of the compost and just do some re-education, and kind of also, carrot and a stick, but, having a little bit of a stick sometimes is needed.
And that is the goal, so when the contamination, if it is a bit able to be identified, the goal really is to get the outreach team involved. So, because a lot of times it's simple, misunderstanding or just additional education that's needed. And hopefully the hope is that will solve the problem right away within the next couple of loads, right? So that is absolutely the goal, is outreach first.
New employees, putting stuff in the wrong compactor,
Sure.
all sorts of,
Exactly.
but it's still good to be able to go back and have some accountability so that there's accountability on their end to do the training, and make sure that they get it right.
Yeah, exactly.
Further questions or discussion? I have one minor point to make, just a point of clarification, bringing it up now. In the rates table, the very last page of the board packet, under load status, Dan had mentioned this last time, I don't think it got changed. Under load status accepted, in the far right column, associated fines, it says no additional fine. I believe it really ought to say no fine.
No fine.
That's right.
Otherwise, it would imply that there's a fine even for bringing
good
in
stuff.
an accepted load. But
Good catch.
Yeah, we will
That,
correct that. Apologies for not doing that.
it'd be an important point to make.
Yes.
I'm wondering if that's a vestige from the struck through language, because if they were subject to the, that, I can't remember what the term for it is, but if they were subject to the cumulative non-response fine, then an additional would be appropriate. But without that, you agreed, it doesn't seem to add anything additional.
Yeah, let's strike that.
Yep, we will fix that.
Thank you. Bryn, your hand is up.
Thanks. I'm curious about the actually the action is with the licensed entity, with the hauler. So Has there been thought or communication as to how the flow through of a fine or flow through of the penalty, the messaging for the penalty will be, when there are mixed loads?
So we spoke about this a little bit last time, that it's definitely a challenge in that we don't do the hauling and therefore are dependent on the third-party haulers to be the interface with all of those generators, and almost always they are mixed loads. There's a
Yep.
few exceptions to that. So not every time will they be able to identify the source of the contamination, but that is going to be up to them. With our help, we are going to offer our outreach staff and our own staff when and where that makes sense, but it will be up to them. In the last year and a half or so that we've been developing this and talking directly to the haulers, we've found that because they're still there as we begin the load report, or if we grab the piece of contamination out of the load, and we've heard from them like, oh yeah, we know where that came from, or I know where that came from. And so we're hoping that they will be able to, the driver will be able to incorporate that information or pass that information along to whoever within their organization might be the one to pass along any fines if they so choose. Yeah, but it is kind of out of our control how that will happen, that piece of it. But we have, in meeting with the different haulers that we've met with so far, that has not, I mean, we've talked about it as a thing, but it's not been something that they've been too worried about. And I think, again, that's because they know their routes and they know where the most problematic material typically comes from, understanding that they're not going to be able to get it every time. And they likely won't pass fines along every time, but I think they will be able to target the ones that are recurring and most problematic.
Thanks. I wasn't gonna make the mark, so I missed that conversation. Yeah, I'm just thinking about the just logistics and feasibility. Obviously, CSW does not have that I guess role. And thinking about the point of contacts for the haulers might be the financial officer that's paying for the invoicing for the collection, rather than the DPW director or facilities management lead for an organization. So again, I'm just trying to think logistically around how the messaging will reach the person that has the decision-making authority around and the greatest amount of influence over larger organizational messaging, rather than just the financial office that's paying the hauling invoices.
Yeah, so we're actually doing separate communications with it for each hauler. The actual fines, if there are any, will happen on a monthly basis, whereas the actual incident report happens within 36 hours of the incident. And so whereas the financial office will certainly be receiving the bill along with their monthly billing, we are trying to identify who those individuals are who would be most responsible for passing along the message to potential generators as the first point of contact with the more regular load reports.
Okay, great. Glad to
Alan, I wasn't at the last meeting, but based on your last bit of conversation, you have talked to most of the haulers about this change.
Mhm.
And have you gotten comments back from them?
We have, yeah. I mean, we've mostly done, our staff has done in-person meetings primarily, and surprisingly, we're quite well received. I was not anticipating that. If you recall, we started down this path almost 10 years ago and had some less than favorable responses when we did meet with haulers at that point. And so that's what I was expecting, but no, they know that contamination is a problem, and they, more than one of them, including a couple of the bigger ones, were seemingly grateful to have a tool, like not what you would expect perhaps with anything that is a financial penalty, but they express gratitude that they would be able to have something to then, you know, because they know without this policy where some of the stuff's coming from, and they don't feel like they have the ability to do anything about it because they don't want to lose customers, whatever the reasons are. So
Thank you.
yes, we got good feedback.
We've been having conversations with haulers for over a year about this. This is not a surprise.
Right.
And, you know, over the past several months, at least, I think, you know, from probably January anyway, doing kind of like mini versions of this with haulers, kind of a preview, saying, you know, hey, here's something that if this policy comes into play, this is likely going to be tagged as a contaminated load. Here's why, to get them understanding what they're going to see before it actually takes effect.
Yes, they've had lots of practice, and we also, part of the design for this was to hopefully have authorization tonight and then not actually implement any fines until July 1st, giving us a couple full months of additional practice where we can really underscore the motivation to correct behavior rather than, you know, impose fines. So we're going to make it very clear and be like, please help us help you correct this practice and identify where it's coming from before July 1st. And we're pretty hopeful about that.
Leslie, your hand's up, and then Rick.
Thanks. When we did the presentation at the Jericho Select Board for the budget, I think Sarah may recall the issue of contaminated organics came up as a question. And in response, Sarah, as I recall, and correct me if I'm wrong, Sarah, said that schools have been identified as one of the significant problem areas. You know, chip bags and so on from school cafeterias. And I would presume other institutional cafeterias, whether it's the hospital or the university, colleges, et cetera, would be similar problems. Some way to loop back with the outreach team, maybe use the outreach team to take this policy back to some of those problem areas. I mean, if we've identified the problem areas, we might as well, I think, tie these two initiatives together. Just an idea.
Absolutely, and that is the intent, that is the goal. So that, you know, but we need the haulers' help, right? So we need their help to kind of point us in the right direction. And then we can really target and focus that outreach. So when I was talking about contamination from schools, yes, some chip bags, but also a lot of containers, milk boxes, juice boxes, things like that. And Dan is sharing some images, and on that left-hand side, I believe Dan was the load from a school, and you can see, you know, the milk cartons, and you'll see some applesauce containers, things like that. So by having a policy in place, we can hopefully, again, with the help of the hauler, the driver may likely know, to be able to say, we want to be able to go approach this school and give them a refresher course. Help them try to identify some of the problem areas, maybe retrain their custodial staff, retrain the moms or dads who may be working in the lunchroom, go in and do a presentation, an assembly to the school and talk about this. So that is the first step, the primary action to be taken with this is to, you know, kind of let Rhonda go at it, but also, again, Gabby can do these presentations and Kat can do these presentations. So we have this team of folks who can go out into the community where we can identify these things. So yeah, that is absolutely the process we'll be following.
Okay, Rick, your hand was up.
Yes, clarifying question about the table of fines. If you've got a hypothetical load that's in the 5 to 10% range, for contamination, but no incidental contamination. That's going to be a $75 fine, correct? Or $75 per ton.
Correct.
Let's take that same load and add in some incidental contamination. Is that going to then be $125?
It is.
Or actually, that's a per load fee. So would that be on top of the contamination fee?
The $50 would be on top of the contamination fee if there were contamination, because incidental contamination is designed to address particularly problematic materials, regardless of how clean the rest of the load is. And so it may be a pristine load, but there's a bag of wine bottles, and we want to make sure that we have some mechanism, like, because if we were just basing it on volume thresholds, then there would be no mechanism by which to administer a fine, and so we needed that in there. So yes, it's in addition to.
Yep, that was, just a clarification. Thank you.
Yep.
Bryn, your hand is up again.
Yeah, thanks. Just reading through the document, again, if I can find it. I want to just caution the 36-hour window. There may be a number of predictable and unpredictable instances where you cannot meet that 36-hour window. So it may be worthwhile just modifying that language under page 3, item 2, to say something like with our ability or something, we'll aim to send a hauler copy within 36 hours, just so that there's some accommodation for yourselves for not being able to meet that window. We've had a number of instances just the last few months where facilities have closed because of weather, so adverse weather. So just, again, wanting to make sure you're giving yourself some room.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Although that's like changing to 2 business days, that would accommodate a Sunday.
2 business days, yes, that would be a welcome change, as well as we'll aim to, if we want to put that in there, given that it's our own requirement. I think we could make either of those or both of those changes. Just to note, we anticipate generally it would be less than 8 hours that we would be doing this. But it is nice to have some buffer in there just in case. So if we wanted to make those, I mean, we would welcome those edits, one or both, but I'll just try to rephrase it with both. Number 2 there would say, if this load is deemed to be contaminated, CSWD staff will aim to complete a contaminated load report and send the hauler a digital copy within 2 business days.
I think that's a good improvement.
All right, we will make that change if everybody else is in
Well,
agreement.
we haven't got the resolution on the presented yet, but we'll keep that in mind when the resolution is read into the record and hopefully moved and seconded and further discussed as needed. I guess if there's no further preliminary discussion, we're ready to entertain the reading of the resolution.
Okay, let's see here. So we haven't passed this yet as a document. So it originally said as written, but we are editing. So I don't want to say as amended because it's not an official policy that needs amendment. So the wording had been, be it resolved that the Board of Commissioners approves the organics recycling facility contamination policy.
Go ahead with this, and then we will just read right back into the record the corrections that we have just discussed. And I think that would make it clear.
Okay. Be resolved that the Board of Commissioners approves the organics recycling facility contamination policy as written, with implementation of any financial policies associated with contamination to begin July 1, 2024.
So moved. Seconds up, Burlington.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. We'll open this up for discussion. And I think we have 2 points that we would like to discuss and clarify. One, Dan, if you could
Yes.
go back and just tell us that edited wording that you want? I can't find the exact paragraph. but
So,
you lead us through that.
The first one is in paragraph 2 on the second page. It says, the edited language says, if the load is deemed to be contaminated, CSWD staff will aim to complete a contaminated load report and send the hauler a digital copy within 2 business days. The next edit is in the first line of the rates table, where it currently says no additional fine. We would strike the language additional. So it just reads no fine.
Thank you for those 2 clarifications. Further discussion or questions on the resolution? Again, we've had better part of a month to consider the original essence of this policy. It's been some edits have been made, some correct changes made, and a few edits made tonight. So I think it's been well considered. It's an important thing to consider thoroughly and well, especially since there are fines attached to it. We don't want to discover later on unintended consequences, but I think we've done a good job of both staff and the board of thinking about this, reviewing it, and honing it to a good, solid policy. If there is no further discussion or questions, then I think we're ready for the question. All those in favor of adopting the policy for this resolution, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? The policy is adopted.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dan,
Thank
for all the
you.
work. I guess over 10 years. I wasn't aware how long this has been under consideration.
The wheels move slowly.
Fight for a long
Important to
time.
get things right. Next item on the agenda is other business. I believe Sarah has one point to make.
Yep, I just want to remind commissioners who are in cities or towns between A and L to let Amy know if you are being reappointed, and that to let the clerk know that they'll need to send copies of the minutes that have your reappointment in them. I was at a few meetings where some folks were reappointed, but just for officialness, to get that over to Amy when that occurs.
This is the year for A through.
A through L.
L.
Yep,
The
you're good.
towns A through L,
Towns,
not
yeah.
commissioners A through L.
Yes, right, that's right, cities and towns,
I believe it's A through K.
A through K,
Okay.
oh, okay. First half.
Bryn, you have something under other business to bring up?
Just want to wish everybody a happy Green Up Day. And the 4th be with.
Happy Jedi Day upcoming.
And I just wanted to make one important reminder that our May meeting will be an important one. We will be hopefully be reviewing bids for the construction of the new MRF.
Bids are due this Friday for the construction of the building, and we will be reviewing those the next week. And fingers crossed for a good result as far as the cost comes in.
But for all commissioners, it's an important meeting, so
May is
hopefully you'll be able to keep your calendar clear to be here for that, again, very important meeting.
How many contractors have taken up plans, specs?
We had, that's a good question. I know for sure, I believe 2 for sure, but we had about 7 or 8 attend their walkthrough meeting. And a slew of questions were asked, which is good. So we're hoping that we'll have between 2 and 4 responses. If we only have 1, we have a problem, so we'll report that back as well, but we're expecting at least 2, hopefully 4.
So unless there is any other business to bring before the board tonight, I think we're ready to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Seconded Essex.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that we adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye.